All right, does TRT actually help you as an entrepreneur and ultimately give you more success and the outcomes and benefits in business that you'd be looking for? If you're wondering that question, I'm about to unpack that in this video right now. So for me, I've been in business now for about 14 years. I was a personal trainer and strength coach. That was my first business. I did that for 6 or 7 years. And now I've been on TRT for about 10 years. I'm 37, so I'm middle-aged. So I'm married, I've got 3 little kids. And I have generated multiple 7 figures in revenue with my businesses over the years. In fact, now I have a sales agency, but also this video is gonna be helpful for you because I have nothing to sell you because I run a sales agency. I have no fitness or health offering for you. So hopefully this is a very nice, unbiased video and content. And I also need to say, I am not obviously a doctor, and so consult your physician. I'm just gonna be unpacking like my personal experience. If that helps you, that's fantastic, but also do your own research, talk to your doctor. This is not medical advice. So I'm gonna give my whole experience on TRT, and then after I share all that, I will give you my diagnosis and answer to this question: does it actually help get you better at business? So first off, before I go through my protocol and like some of the benefits and the negatives, why don't I tell you why I started? So even though I was 27 when I started TRT, I was a fitness guy, I lifted weights. I had a lot of people even back then be like, dude, you're not natural, like you're on steroids. So I had a good amount of muscle and all that kind of stuff, but I started to feel some of these different symptoms. I was having brain fog, I was lacking mental acuity, like being able to remember or recollect information. I was starting to lose motivation and just like intensity when it came to meetings and meeting deadlines and driving the business. My libido with my wife was like fairly decent, but still it like wasn't ideal, I guess, in my mind. So I had all these symptoms. And so essentially I always would get blood work. And so out of curiosity, I was like, you know what, I should like get blood work again, see what's going on. Lo and behold, my testosterone was like in the 280s, which is very, very low for someone who's 27 years old. Now with going on TRT, it is a commitment. And so I didn't want to tread that path lightly. And so what I did first was, all right, look, I'm gonna go through a detox. I'm gonna add some supplements. I'm gonna try the best I can to sleep, and let's see where things settle out. So I spent thousands of dollars on very, very sophisticated supplements. I went through this whole detox protocol. It was about 4 months, trying to clear out xenoestrogens, exposure to plastics, et cetera, et cetera. And after all that, so thousands of dollars in the drain, changing eating habits and environmental factors, and got retested. I was still at like 360 or something like that, and the symptoms were still there. So I did decide to pull the trigger on doing the TRT thing. And so I don't know if this is you guys too, but like the symptoms is what needs to be treated with TRT, not the blood work. So I know a lot of guys who feel like total trash. So all those symptoms of like brain fog, low motivation, bad sleep, like lack of energy, just a lack of overall well-being. I know a bunch of guys that don't start feeling relief from those symptoms until they're at like 800, 900, 1,000 in terms of their total testosterone levels. I also know guys that they have all those symptoms go away at 500, 600. So like, don't treat based on your blood work, treat based on the symptoms. That's at least my advice and what has worked for me. And so those were the symptoms that I was feeling. It was obviously showing up in business because, you know, being able to drive the business, have high level meetings, hire people, fire people, all that kind of stuff. It was more stressful than it needed to be and more difficult than it needed to be. And I just wasn't like on my A game. I wasn't feeling like Rocky after training in the snow, getting ready for Drago. It was like, you know, I don't know. I felt not that, right? So once I started testosterone, What I did is I started kind of on the lower to middle end. Again, everyone's different. So I know a bunch of guys who they do 100 milligrams a week of testosterone. That makes them feel great. I know guys who need like 250 milligrams a week or 300 milligrams a week to feel great. Obviously, if you have a history of using steroids, like that's gonna be a factor. How much muscle mass you have, your genetics, all those things are gonna play a factor. So for me, I started at 150 milligrams a week, and that got me feeling really, really good. I literally went from like 218 pounds and I jumped to like 228 in a matter of months. So I did lose body fat, I did gain muscle, but more importantly, all of my symptoms went away. So I was feeling more motivated. I was feeling like I could remember information easier. I was more inspired and like excited to drive the business. I could get away with sleeping less hours. All that kind of stuff that I wanted to feel, I was definitely starting to feel. Now, at that time, because like what's important, I think, is you don't want to mess with an aromatase inhibitor or something that's going to mitigate estrogen, because when you go on testosterone, usually the like downstream effects is increasing DHT, which is good, but that can cause hair loss. It can increase estrogen because that is a byproduct of testosterone. That can cause issues. So typically though, like if you're low body fat and you have healthy lifestyle, usually those things settle out fairly well, but that's what I was doing. So I didn't need an aromatase inhibitor, but like most of your doctors or doc in a box places are gonna be like 200 milligrams a week of testosterone, 1 bolus shot, and here's an AI, 1 milligram a week of anastrozole, right? You wanna try and mitigate medications, especially these aromatase inhibitor type of stuff. Like over time, obviously your body's adapting to the testosterone. So like your receptors, they get less and less sensitive over time. So I've had to up and down my testosterone dosage from there as the years go on. And then even at one point, I had to throw in an aromatase inhibitor. I used a SERM first, which is a selective estrogen receptor modulator, because it's a little bit safer, but then that stopped doing the trick. And then so I had to go to an AI. So you kind of have to like play with that, because like long-term, this is like, you need to get blood work every 6 months to consistently make sure that your blood labs are in order, and then managing the symptoms, because your dosage, your protocol might change. Now, what I do, so this is testosterone, this is an insulin needle. I actually pin with an insulin needle, and something that my protocol is instead of doing like a bolus shot once a week, like, you know, in the butt, and there's other application methods too. I know a bunch of guys who, they do a cream, you know, cause you're a pansy, cause you can't do needles. No, if you don't like needles, you can do a cream. There's also like clomiphene, which is like a oral, and it's like, that's usually a stair step into testosterone if you want to try and go that route as well. At the end of the day though, I think testosterone itself, like an exogenous testosterone hormone, is gonna be the best bet, at least just in my experience and what's felt good for me. But also to manage some of the negative effects, which I'm gonna get into, my application method is I do a small shot every day of testosterone, and I just rotate different spots on my shoulders or on the glutes. And so if you have low body fat, that's a better way to do it, because then you're able to mitigate some of the symptoms, but also have more of a steady flow of testosterone on a daily basis, as opposed to peaks and valleys with a weekly shot. So you can play with the frequency, and that'll, at least for me, higher frequency ended up going better. I have lower SHBG, which is sex hormone binding globulin, so that sort of high frequency protocol worked good based on my genetics. That was my protocol then, and then over time, I have had to up my dosage to like 200 milligrams a week, again, because of that receptor fatigue and just how my blood labs and symptoms would sort of undulate. So again, I've messed with my dosage, but a daily shot that accumulates to the 200 milligrams a week has been a great protocol for me. And essentially, like, all of the positives now that I was looking for are there. So I'm, you know, usually pretty excited to like jump out of bed. I feel rested. I'm ready to tackle the day. I can go into meetings confidently. I can hire, fire. I can tackle big projects. I can do all the things that I need to do in business. And I feel like I have a bit more of an edge for sure, on top of some of the other things like having lower body fat percentage, having muscle tissue, having more bone density, all those different things. Now, there are some negatives and downsides or side effects when you're on TRT, and those need to be discussed and understood. But for me, the positives and upside far outweighed the negatives and the downside. So some of the downsides are you're definitely gonna get more body hair. I didn't used to have a bunch of like back and shoulder hair, and now I got a lot. And then I have had more of a fast progression with like hair loss, so that's a thing too. And then also, if you're not careful with your administration and just like how you guys do your protocol, you can have other side effects that are like more damaging or ill effects on your health. It can crash some guys' HDLs, right, and your lipid profile, which can be negative when it comes to like heart health. You can increase your hematocrit, which is like your blood viscosity or thickness. That can have some downside effects on health with your heart if your blood gets too thick. Your estrogen can jump, and that can sometimes cause gyno, right? When you get your nipples just get the size of dinner plates and they hurt. And side note, because I have tested and experimented with other types of anabolics, like that did cause gynecomastia for me, and I had to get surgery to get it removed. So you guys are gonna have to understand that there are negatives and downsides, but I mean, feeling more confident, having more energy, having more mental clarity, having a stronger libido, all those things, your wife will either love it or hate it. So be careful with that part. So did this help me in business? 100% for me, it did. I feel like, again, as everything I've mentioned, it really helped me perform at a higher level when it came to business in terms of being focused and tackling a project and not getting out of focus, recollecting, remembering information. So like that mental acuity, energy, inspiration, excitement, motivation, all those things from the TRT has definitely helped me in the business world. Now, just to mention maybe a few ancillary biohacking chemicals, peptides, medications, supplements, and stuff, because obviously this journey for me, and maybe it will be for you if you end up going down this process, it's going to cascade into other biohacking. How can I get more edge? How can I improve my health further? So that led into tadalafil, which is like your Cialis. I really like that it had a prostate protective component to it. Obviously, it's nice to put a little extra punch in you know what. So that's good, but like, you know, as we age as men in prostate cancer and prostate health, having something that protects the prostate tissues, the Cialis actually does that. And it even can help with blood pressure slightly. And it can also then help with some of your hematocrit, or if you have thicker blood, it can help with that piece. Now with the peptides, I've also gone down that rabbit trail. As I got my blood work every 6 months, I was always tracking IGF-1, which is your insulin-like growth factor. It kind of pertains to growth hormone, right? Which is going to also add other health benefits. I'm not going to get into that, but there's these growth hormone secretagogues now through peptides, through the whole peptide space. This is one, if you can see it, that I use now. This is a triple stack blend. This has tesamorelin, which is a growth hormone secretagogue, FDA approved, has the most research and stuff behind it. This will increase growth hormone levels. It also has MGF, which is muscle-like growth factor. So if you've got aches, pains, joint issues, it's gonna help with that. I have a torn meniscus that I tore again, and I've always kind of worked through with my training. I have herniated discs, 2 of them. So this has really aided in that. And in fact, the last time I got an MRI, the doctor said I don't have herniated discs anymore. Not sure if it's attributed to this or other stuff, but that's a benefit. And then it also has ipamorelin, which is another growth hormone secretagogue. Very like high lipolytic effect. So meaning like if you're looking for a little edge on fat loss and keeping your body fat levels down, but also keeping your skin healthy, keeping muscle tissue, just all that kind of stuff. A peptide like this is extremely useful. I've enjoyed that. Recently experimenting with GHKCU, which is like the copper peptide. Still, you know, the results there kind of like, we'll see where things land on that, but helps with collagen and so like skin health. So if you have like scars, sagging eyes, even hair loss, supposedly the copper peptide, because we lose copper in our system as we get older. And so obviously supplementing that can be extremely helpful. That's some of the ancillary stuff that I'm using now as well. So like TRT overall, been a great experience for me. The side effects have been heavily outweighed by the benefits. And if this video was helpful, give it a double tap, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, ring the bell, you know, all that kind of good stuff. Share it with somebody. And also like comment below. Like, I wanna know if you're looking at this, if you have questions, or if you're on a protocol, what your protocol is. But hopefully this video was helpful and you got some value from it.